Bruce Beck, WNBC sports director, joins us on Big Board Sports, reacting to the firing of Ben McAdoo, the firing of Jerry Reese, the cleaning house yesterday with the G-men, and we move forward now to the Dallas Cowboy game, in which Eli Manning, I'm sure, will be the starting quarterback. Bruce, longtime friend of ours. Good morning, Bruce. Thanks for a few minutes on Big Board Sports, my man.
Hey, how you guys doing? It was a tumultuous day yesterday, and it has been a season that has been loaded with turmoil from the get-go. Crazy stuff.
You're not kidding. And I heard you ask the question, and it was probably the longest response that Mara gave. You asked him just how embarrassed he was over this season, and he kind of took it from there.
Yeah, I also asked him about the whole thing with the Giants way, and has the Giants organization lost its way? I thought it was fair because we just haven't seen the same type of leadership that we've seen in the past. And John is embarrassed. It's been a multitude of things, from suspensions to injuries to the Eli Manning benching to just the dysfunctional nature of the team and the offense, which, you know, Ben was supposed to bring it to a new level, has just been terrible. So I think Mara realizes that this weekend would have been just a travesty if all the former players were on the sidelines, as they kind of indicated that they would be, wearing Eli jerseys, and the fans stayed in the parking lot to grill sausage and burgers but not go to the game. I think in many ways he cut any chance of that happening up short here by making these moves.
Bruce, is Eli Manning the starting quarterback in 2018?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's up to what you do as an organization. Do you blow it up, or are you close enough with enough pieces, enough components, that you go after it and try to be a playoff team next year? Because last year you were 11-5. So I think the question is how they go about the draft. I think if there's a top-level quarterback, and there should be from their position, whether it's Darnold or Rosen or somebody else, I think at some point to compete in this division, you're going to have to pick a quarterback, even if he doesn't start right away. And so, in my opinion, the move would be to keep Eli and to groom one of these draft picks, top draft picks. He's the perfect guy to mentor a youngster, and then you've got your quarterback for the next 15 years.
WNBC's Bruce Beck with us here on Big Board Sports, also an Ithaca College grad. And if I haven't mentioned it on the show, Ithaca did win the Cortica Jug this year, Raj.
Yes, go Bombers.
Follow him on Twitter, at Bruce Beck 4NY. It's not just Giants talk. You get the landscape of New York sports with Bruce on Twitter. Bruce, is that a role that Eli will embrace? I mean, obviously, he had a mentor in Kurt Warner when he was drafted early on in the first round. Is that something Eli would embrace?
I think there's something to be said about Eli wanting to still compete and compete at a high level. And if he's still quarterback for a couple of years, or goes as long as he wants, I think he would handle it, because he still would be the guy, or he still would be competing for the number one position. But I also believe that it may not be realistic, and that Tom Coughlin's going to come calling. Jacksonville needs a starting quarterback. Denver could use a starting quarterback. Look, it never ends well for anybody. Just ask his brother Peyton, although it did end well with him with a Super Bowl win. But the point is, you end up going to another place. And as much as we hated seeing Joe Namath in a different jersey, or here in New York, when you talk New York sports, Walt Frazier in a Cleveland Cavaliers uniform, it doesn't always end the way you want it to. So as far as Eli is concerned, I think that he could still be a starting quarterback in this league. A perfect fit would be Jacksonville. Perfect fit would be Denver. But the Giants may feel that he's still their guy, and it's depending on what they do in the draft, he still believes he's the starter, and he still believes he can play at a high level. So how will he embrace that role of being a mentor? I'm just not sure. But I know he'll be classed the way he was, even with this demotion.
Bruce, how much do you blame John Mara for the mess, not only this season, but the mess that we had with the benching of Eli Manning last week?
I think John has to be blamed here, because he needed to take a more involved role. I mean, he listened to what Ben said and said, okay, go ahead. But he realizes now that it was his fault. He should have not signed off on it. He should have said, no, we're not going to do it this way. He should have known that Eli Manning is such a competitive guy that he didn't want to give up this streak, and he also didn't want to give up, a situation where he leaves the game in the middle. He wants to win. He still wants to play at a high level, even if the team's terrible. So he should have known the answer, and Ben did know the answer. So it's like me asking you, Raj, if you want to do something and knowing you're going to say no, well, why do I ask you in the first place? It was poorly schemed out and really a poor job on John in that part, but he did take onus for it yesterday.
He did. There's no doubt.
Bruce,
I think that was the last straw. I really do.
Yeah.
That and the outrage by the fans, they were really just tired of this whole regime, and it needed to go. And I have a lot of respect for Jerry Reese. I've covered him for a lot of years. I said goodbye to him yesterday. He wished me a happy holiday. But the draft has been subpar for the last 5 to 7 years. There's been a couple of great picks, and Beckham is one of them, and Landon Collins is another. But overall, the depth is where you win in this league, and you've got to have fifth-rounders that stick, and he hasn't had that. And the offensive line needed to be fixed. If your star player is Eli Manning, and if your offense is what you're gearing things off, you've got to make a move there and improve your offensive line. And he was very stubborn in not getting a guy to replace Eric Flowers at left tackle.
Bruce, can you help us understand the person Ben McAdoo? Obviously, in addition to your work with just WNBC, we saw you in the Capital Region on News Channel 13 here as we picked up the Giants preseason games. You've had countless opportunities to not only speak with Ben McAdoo, but to do it privately or at least one-on-one in front of a camera. What was lost between the stories we hear about him, how great he was as a people person when he was an assistant, to what happened when he was a head coach, and we just kind of see the media gaggle, and he seems cold, distant, and agitated more often than not?
I just think that he was uncomfortable, Chris, in the role. I really think that it never really fit him well. Being an assistant is one thing. When you become a head coach, you're no longer buddies with the players. You're playing a totally different role. He never adapted to that role. His communication skills were not good enough. He was not happy talking to the media. In New York, you've got to figure out a way to embrace it or at least fake it if you're not enjoying it. And so a lot of that awkwardness comes through in your presentation. And, Todd Bowles isn't the most, I think, easy to deal with in terms of he doesn't give you great sound bites.
Yep.
But at the same time, he's affable, he's likable, and he's trying to cooperate. He's just not charming and outgoing. It's just the way he is. But McAdoo looked like he was always playing a part rather than being who he was.
Huh. Bruce, nobody covers the New York sports scene better than you do. You've been doing it for a long time. Let's switch gears here before we let you go. And tomorrow at noon, I'm assuming you'll be at the press conference to officially introduce Aaron Boone as Joe Girardi's placement as the new manager of the Yankees. What's your thoughts just initially right now before any games have been played? I'm sure he'll win the press conference. What do you think of the hiring of Aaron Boone?
It's interesting, Roger, because comings and goings is the way I described yesterday in New York sports. When you've got 9 pro teams in the 4 major sports, there's always something going on. I'm on my way to Yankee Stadium right now to cover the Pinstripe Bowl. Wink, wink. I'm trying to get Randy Levine and maybe Lon Trotsky a Southside and Aaron Boone just ahead of it because I could use that today. The bottom line is Aaron Boone is a guy who's being handed the keys to the castle, and he's never managed. So the negative against Aaron Boone is he's never managed at any level. The positive is he played 12 years in the big leagues. He was 8 years as an ESPN broadcaster. He's likable. He's knowledgeable. He buys into analytics. He's played for this franchise, hit one of the most hallowed homers in the history of the Yankees franchise, that ALCS 2003 walk-off homer against the Red Sox in Game 7. Aaron Boone is a guy who I think will be a communicator in the locker room with a bunch of young kids. When you've got Aaron Judge and Greg Bird and Gary Sanchez and Luis Severino, you've got to cater to these guys. And I think that the one negative about Girardi was that he didn't communicate as well with those guys. He had a little bit of a tiff with Sanchez, and his negative or serious nature could have rubbed off. The players could have felt that pressure. I think Boone will be much easier going, and that will impact these young guys. I think you or I could come into the situation and have a chance with this Yankees team that was one win away from going to the World Series, but no one realizes how good Joe Girardi was by managing a ball game, and that's something Aaron Boone's going to have to learn.
Keep up the great work, Bruce. We really appreciate, I know, busy times for you. Appreciate a few minutes here on ESPN Radio in Albany.
Anytime to go on Big Board Sports with you guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, you, Bruce. Appreciate it.